I think it was Free Thought Day, and he had emailed me a couple months before saying, I have this Robert Ingersoll thing that I do. And I'm like, really? That sounds interesting. Tell me more. And he did. And at the time, I was so busy getting all the other stuff set up for Free Thought Day, all I could offer Sean was, well, we can give you a spot on the grass and you can do your thing. And he was eager to do that, and I thought it was awesome. And unfortunately, during the day, I was so busy with everything else, I barely got a chance to come by and say hi. But I heard from many people who were at Free Thought Day who were like, there was this guy pretending to be Robert Ingersoll the whole day, and he was awesome. I heard this from multiple people. And so I got in touch with him again and said, yeah, let's bring you down to Manteca, be a part of our colloquium. Since then, he's also performed as Mr. Ingersoll for the Sacramento Humanists. I personally think this is a show that needs to go much larger than the Central Valley. So please, let's welcome Sean O'Brien to the stage, and as Robert Ingersoll.
I believe in the government of kindness. I believe in truth, in investigation, in free thought. I would like to give a little bit more liberty to men, a little more liberty to women. I do not believe that the hand of want will be eternally extended in the world. I do not believe that the prison will forever scar the ground. I do not believe the shadow of the gallows will forever curse the earth. I do not believe that will always be true that the men and women who work the hardest have the least to eat and the least to wear. I do believe that the day will come when liberty, morality, and justice, like the rings of Saturn, will surround the earth. That the world will be better. And every true man and woman and every free man and woman will do what they can to hasten the coming of the religion of human advancement. We have already compared the benefits of theology and science. When the theologian governed, the world was full of huts and hovels for the many, palaces and cathedrals for the few. To nearly all the children of man, reading and writing were unknown arts. The poor were clad in rags and skins. They devoured crusts and gnawed bones. The day of science dawned. And the luxuries of a century ago are the necessities of today. Men in the middle ranks of life have more of the conveniences and elegancies than the kings and princes of the theological times. And above, and more than this, is the development of mind. There is more of value in the brain of the average man of today, of the master mechanic, of the chemist, of the naturalist, of the inventor, than there was in the brain of the world 400 years ago. These blessings did not fall from the sky. These benefits did not drop from the outstretched hands of priests. They were not found in cathedrals or behind altars, nor were they searched for with holy candles. They were not discovered with the closed eyes of prayer, nor were they in answer to superstitious supplication. These are the children of freedom. The blessings of reason, observation, and experience. And for them all, man is indebted to man. I understand that for many thousands of years, the great questions of existence have been settled by religion. I understand that during all that time, men have gotten their information from priests. I know that when India was supreme, they worshipped Brahma and Vishnu. And when Rome held in its hand the red sword of war, they worshipped Jove. And now our religion has swept to the top. Any man living in India a few hundred or 1,000 years ago would have said, this is the only true religion. Why? Because here is the only true civilization. And now all those religions, having died, although they were all true religions, we say ours is the only true religion because ours is the greatest commercial nation on the earth. Man has made every religion in this world. And that religion has been good or bad according to whether the men who made it were good or bad. If they were savages and barbarians, they made a god like Jehovah. Every man makes his own god. Show me the god a man worships, and I will tell you what kind of man he is. Every man makes his own god. Every man worships his own god. And we have been civilizing our God for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. He's getting better every day. I know that many people believe that it is only in the Bible where one can find a true and perfect standard of morality. There are many good precepts, wise sayings, good rules and regulations in the Bible. And these are mingled with bad precepts, foolish sayings, absurd rules, and cruel laws. In Exodus, we are given an account of the manner with which Jehovah delivered the Jews from Egyptian bondage. We now know that the Jews were never enslaved by the Egyptians. We know this because there is not in the Hebrew language one word of Egyptian origin, and there cannot be found in the language of the Egyptians one word of Hebrew origin. This being so, we know that the Hebrews and the Egyptians could not have lived together for hundreds of years. Certainly, Exodus was not written to teach morality. In that book, you cannot find one word against human slavery. As a matter of fact, Jehovah was a believer in that institution. The killing of cattle with hail and disease, the murder of every firstborn so that in every home is death, certainly wasn't moral. It was fiendish. All the laws found in Exodus, so far as they were good and sensible, including the Ten Commandments, were at that time in force among all the people of the world. Murder is and always was a crime, and always will be as long as the majority of people object to being murdered. Industry always is and always was an enemy of larceny. The nature of man is such that he admires the truth teller and despises the liar. Among all people, among all tribes, truth-telling is considered a virtue and false swearing a vice. The love of parents for the children is natural, and it is a love that is found among all the animals that live. The worship of, quote, any other god, unquote, could not have been worse than the worship of Jehovah. And nothing is more absurd than the sacredness of the Sabbath. Before we can truthfully say that the Bible constitutes a moral guide, we must add and subtract. We must throw some things out and add others in their place. Many of the laws and regulations found in Leviticus, Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are good. Many are absurd and cruel. The entire ceremonial of worship is insane. Most of the punishments for the violation of law are brutal. The fact is that the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, uphold nearly all crimes. And to say that it is moral is as absurd to say that it is merciful or true. There is nothing of moral value found in Joshua or Judges. These books are filled with crimes, with massacres and murders. The story of Ruth is not particularly moral. In 1st and 2nd Samuel, you cannot find one word calculated to develop the brain or conscience. Jehovah murdered 70,000 Jews because David took a census of the people. David, according to the account, was the guilty one, but only the innocent were killed. In 1st and 2nd Kings, there is nothing of ethical value. All the kings who refused the priests were denounced. And all the crowned wretches who assisted the priest were proclaimed to be the favorites of Jehovah. In that book, you cannot find one word in favor of human liberty. There are some good psalms and some that are merciful. Most of these psalms are selfish. Many are a passionate appeal for revenge. The story of Job shocks the heart of every good man. The children of Job are murdered to settle a little wager between God and the devil. Nothing is done for the children who are murdered. Of course, the book of Esther is utterly absurd, and the only redeeming value of the book is that the name of Jehovah is never mentioned. I like the Song of Solomon, because there you find, because that's about love, that's something I can understand. There are now and again a good proverb. Some are flat and some are commonplace. I like the book of Ecclesiastes, because there you find some sense, some poetry, and some philosophy. Take away the interpolations, and it is a good book. Of course, there is nothing in Nehemiah or Ezra to make men better, nothing in Jeremiah or Lamentations calculated to lessen vice, and only a few passages in Isaiah that can be used in a good cause. In some of them, in Ezekiel and Daniel, there is nothing but the ravings of the insane. In some of the minor prophets, there is now and again a good verse, now and again an elevated thought. The trouble is that the spirit of the Old Testament is bad, selfish, and cruel. The most absurd things are commanded, commended, and applauded. The stories that are told of Joseph, of Elijah, of Daniel and Gideon, and many others too, are hideous and hellish. On the whole, the Bible cannot be said to be a good moral guide. Jehovah was not a moral God. He had all of the faults and none of the virtues. He generally carried out his threats, but he never faithfully kept a promise. Of course, the writers of the Old Testament were savages, slowly crawling towards the light. We must give them credit for the noble things they said, and we must be charitable enough to excuse their faults and even their crimes. I know that many Christians regard the Old Testament as the foundation and the New Testament as the superstructure. And while they admit that the Old Testament has faults and mistakes, they insist that the New is the flower and perfect fruit. I admit, there are many good things in the New Testament. And if we take from that book the dogmas of eternal pain, of infinite revenge, of the atonement, of human sacrifice, the necessity of shedding blood, if we take from that book the doctrines of non-resistance, of loving enemies, the idea that prosperity is a result of wickedness, and that poverty is in preparation for paradise. If we throw all these out and keep the good creditable, aspects, we can make a fairly good moral guide. Narrow, but moral. You would have nothing about human rights, nothing in favor of the family, nothing for education, for reason, investigation, or thought, but still you would have a fairly good moral guide. On the other hand, if you took the foolish passages, the extreme ones, you could make a creed that would satisfy an insane asylum. If you took the cruel passages, the ones that inculcate eternal hatred, you could make a creed that would shock the heart of a hyena. The Bible is not a good moral guide. Any man who follows faithfully all of its tenets will end up his days in an insane asylum or a prison. These religions teach the slave values. They make inanimate things holy and falsehood sacred. They create artificial crimes. To eat meat on Friday, to be happy on a Sunday, to eat on a fast day, to be happy in Lent, to dispute a priest, to ask for evidence, to give your honest opinion on Christ, Mohammed, or Jehovah is far worse than to maliciously slander your neighbor. To question or doubt miracles is far worse than to deny known fact. These things are the foes of morality. They subvert all natural conceptions of virtue. Happiness is the only good. Everything that secures happiness is good. That is to say, moral. Everything that is bad is immoral. Therefore, everything that is good is moral and everything that is bad is immoral. What then can be said to be a moral guide? The shortest possible answer is one word: intelligence. The doctrine that future happiness depends upon a belief in God is monstrous. It is the infamy of infamies. The notion that faith in Christ is rewarded with an eternity of bliss, while a dependence upon reason merits everlasting pain, is too absurd for refutation. What man who ever thinks can believe that blood can appease God? And yet our entire religious system is based upon that belief. The ancient Jews pacified Jehovah with the blood of animals, and according to the Christian system, the blood of Christ softened God's heart a little and rendered possible the salvation of a fortunate few. It is hard to conceive how the human brain can give assent to such terrible ideas, or how any sane man can read the Bible and still believe in the doctrine of divine inspiration. We have heard talk enough. We have listened to all of the drowsy, empty, vapid sermons that we wish to hear. We have read your Bible and the works of your best minds. We have heard your prayers, your solemn groans, and your reverential amens. All of these amount to less than nothing. We want one fact. We beg at the doors of your churches for just one fact. We pass our hats beneath your pews and beneath your pulpits and implore you for just one fact. We know all about your moldy wonders and your stale miracles. We want this year's fact. We ask for only one. Give us one fact for charity. Your miracles are too ancient. The eyewitnesses have been dead for 2,000 years. It is contended by many that ours is a Christian government, founded upon the Bible. And all who view that book as false or foolish are destroying the foundations of our country. The truth is, our government was not founded upon the rights of gods, but upon the rights of men. Our Constitution was not framed to declare and uphold the deity of Christ, but the sacredness of humanity. We are the first nation ever to be conceived by the people, for the people. We are the only government on earth with which the gods have had nothing to do. And yet, there are those dishonest and cowardly who would solemnly declare that ours is a Christian government based upon the Bible and upon the infamous laws of Jehovah. All laws for the purpose of making men worship God were born of the same spirit that kindled the fires, that burned the heretics, and gently built the dungeons of the Inquisition. All laws defining or punishing any blasphemy, making it a crime to give your honest opinion about Jehovah, or to laugh at the ignorance of the ancient Jews, or to question the Bible, were passed by impudent bigots and should be immediately repealed by honest men. An infinite God should not have to go into partnership with state legislatures. He should certainly not have to enact laws to prevent himself from being laughed at or questioned. Everyone seems to be afraid to give their honest opinion on the subject of God. They imagine some being up yonder who would be filled with wrath at some poor human being who decided to give his best and honest thought. Can you injure God? No. Why? Because he is infinite. You cannot commit a single sin or injury against him. Therefore, you need have no fear. And yet, the clergy have been telling the people for hundreds of years, there is a crime called blasphemy. There is a personal God. He made the world, he made you, and you ought to get down on your knees and thank him. Thank him. For what? Ought the beggar to thank God, who is starving amidst plenty? Ought the man who toils hard year after year, yet never sees a decent meal, to thank God? Ought the woman who is married to a drunkard? Ought the invalid who is a slave to hereditary disease? Ought the one who is deformed? Ought the millions of poor slaves to thank God? Let us be honest. If we are to credit God with all that is good, we must balance the accounts and debit him with all that is bad. Anyone who attacks the religious opinion of his time must in his turn expect to be attacked. We have not yet outgrown the barbarism that argument must be answered by personal abuse. The religious world has not yet outgrown the argument that you have to answer every argument, not by showing how it is bad, but showing how the man who makes it is bad. It makes no difference if the maker of an arithmetic turned out to be a scoundrel or not. We should still have to believe that 10 times 10 is 100. I expected to be attacked, and I have not been disappointed. All I ask of the religious world is that they simply tell the truth. But that is a good deal more than they will ever do. There was a time when falsehood from the pulpit smote like a sword. But now it has become nothing more than an interesting amusement. Lying seems to be the last weapon in the arsenal of theology. We controlled today by men who do not exist. We are controlled today by phenomena that never did exist. We are controlled today by ghosts and dead men. I propose that we should let the past go. I propose that we should bury the dead past and let the dead past bury the dead past. I believe that Americans have the nerve and the courage and the brains to control and govern themselves without any assistance from dust or ghosts. Superstition has done enough harm already. Religion suspects everything that is pleasant, everything that is joyous. And they often have the notion that God feels best when we feel worst. They have stoned to death the joy of nature with the rock of ignorance and fear. Church and state are two vultures that have fed upon the heart of chained Prometheus. I say, give the human race a chance. Let every man and woman think for themselves and express that thought. There is no wrath in the serene heavens. There is no scowl in the blue of the sky. Upon the throne of the universe, tyranny does not sit as king. This is my doctrine. And I will do what I can while I live to increase in the American people that feeling of independence and personhood. I believe in the gospel of this world. I believe in happiness right here. I do not believe in drinking skim milk all my life with the expectation of butter beyond the clouds. I believe, I say, in the gospel of this world. This is a mighty good world. There are many good people in this world. There's lots of happiness in this world. And I say, let us, as much as we can possibly do so, increase it. Our civilization is not Christian. It did not fall from the sky. It is not the result of divine inspiration. It is the child of invention, of discovery, of applied knowledge, that is to say, of science. When the human race becomes great and grand enough to admit that all have equal rights, when thought is untrammeled, when worship means the doing of useful things, and religion means the discharge of obligations towards one's fellow man, then, and only then, will the world be civilized. Thank you.